Three.
Look that way.
Oh, yeah. In 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mobile Hunter Podcast. I am your host, Chris Leppert, and tonight I am joined by my guests, Jacob Emery, Josh Luck, and Jacob Sklenar. Guys, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. How about the rest of you?
Fantastic day, let me tell you.
So good.
All
So
right.
damn good.
I like it. All right, so we'll get right into it. We're coming out with a new series to help everybody just start off fresh for the new year, 2025, and maybe improve your upcoming deer season. And this new series is going to be called the Level Up series. It's essentially going to help you plan your entire year out and scout and just set yourself up for success, hopefully fairly early rather than later. So, we'll just kind of dive right into it. Just to be clear for everybody, I do have a list of notes and bullet points and everything, but this is going to be more of a back and forth deep dive as we prefer to do. So while I am, the host, everybody has an open floor to, agree, disagree, and of course, add anything they want to. So, everybody ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think the first thing that we got to hit on is proximity to your home and what all you guys can afford to do. And this is something that I think everybody has to really think about, because more often than not, we get this wild hair up our ass, like I first did when I learned everything I did from Jake, and I was going to go to like 74 of the 50 states and kill bucks everywhere because I could find a scrape now. But it just doesn't work out quite that way for people with like kids and everything. So let's talk a little bit about how you guys select your spots when it comes to like the proximity of your home, time, budget, preferred terrain, stuff like that.
Okay. Who do you want to jump with first? Chris?
Let's go with you. You're the one killing bucks every 3 days.
Well, I'm a little more fortunate than most people when it comes to the time, and I wouldn't say the budget. I live a lifestyle with a career where I can essentially walk in the next day and be like, screw you guys, good luck. I'm going to take the next 4 days off. Have you seen the weather? And if they like it, great. If they don't like it, great as well, because I was looking for a job when I found that one. Being a union electrician, we bounce from contractor to contractor. Layoffs are extremely normal. It's not out of the ordinary. It's funny every time I walk into the bank to see my wife after I hand her my layoff check. How's it going? All the ladies in there saying hi. I was like, great, just lost my job. Maddie rolls her eyes, and they're all like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's like, it's okay. I'm going hunting tomorrow. So I get a lot of time and a lot of freedom as far as time to actually hunt and get out and scout year round. Budget wise, man, I actually ran some numbers early when you sent me these. I've calculated my budget is normally about what I'll spend each season. It made me kind of want to puke. So
burn that shit after the podcast, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So it's $4,000 to $7,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's turkey season. That's scouting. That's
that
tags,
ain't bad.
That's equipment. I mean, that's everything. And I'm allowed to compensate for a lot of that, working with a few partners and doing like some side hustles. I can't express how important I feel it is to find something to grab funds to go do that. That's not taken away from your daily life. So if you can find a way to supplement income, especially like me with 3 kids and a wife and a home and life to take care of, if you can find a way to make some extra money on the side, whether it's cutting firewood, I've actually just submitted a new article for North American Whitetail, taking pictures, videos, editing for people, whatever it may be that you can figure out to do, supplement that income and use it in your hunting budget. So it's not coming out of y'all's paycheck, so to speak.
Those are words of wisdom right there, buddy.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
It's one way to make the wife happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's been a saint this year. She didn't even get antsy until I was in Iowa, and it was like, you know, I could have stayed another day, but I was ready to come home. I'd killed 6 bucks in 4-5 different states, something like that. Had a great year. I'm tickled to death with it. And I mean, right after I pulled the trigger on that Iowa buck, I mean, I flipped right to turkeys anyway. So I was like, all right, I'm on my way home. I'm coming. So.
Killing me. You know what you just reminded me of? Back when we were a single income household and I had to do a little sneaker to kind of work the budget into different places. I used to shop at Meijer or Walmart so I could buy screw-in steps, ladder sticks, fixed tree stand, anything that I needed, broadheads, you name it. I'd buy like the old cheap shitty arrows or whatever, so that way I could just put them on the grocery order, and it was like, oh, we just had a little higher. We had a tree stand here, 6 arrows there, whatever, and then nobody has to know, right?
Yeah, before inflation, you could go to Walmart and buy a $28 Tasco every time, and it never set a red flag off.
Bro.
I mean, that's how I got like 30 of them Tascos. Like every time I went shopping at Walmart, $100 for groceries. Oh, that's normal. Well, really only spent like 75, but
right. Dude, the Tasco budget was real when I went to the grocery store.
That's right.
How about you, Jacob the second?
Yeah.
Skleo.
Well, yeah. Well, for me, I'm not in the same position as Mr. Emery. I don't have kids. I have a fiance, soon to be wife. So next year will be my first year with a wife. But the one thing I don't really have going for me is that like 85 to 90% of my hunts are done in the few hours after work. And being the age I am, most weekends I have a wedding or something like that planned, or something with a fiance or something like that. So I can't hunt probably most of the weekends of the season. I'd probably say about 60% of the weekends of the season I can't hunt for even a day. Every once in a while I'll get out. So I always say to her, like, there are 4 sits in a weekend. There's morning, evening. And I average around 25% of a weekend I hunt. Sometimes that means I get to hunt a full day. Sometimes it means I get half a day on one end, but it's very, very rarely, unless I've established with her that this is a critical time of the year. And I still have a tag burning in my pocket. I don't hunt those days. And part of that is a decision between her and I, that she wants to spend time with me. And the other part of it is I really want to spend time with her too. And she's the most important thing in my life right now. And I know I would far more regret sitting on my deathbed having known that I lost her than lost a big buck way back in 2025 or 24. I'm not going to be thinking about that, but when the love of my life walks out the door, I'm certainly going to be thinking about that quite a bit. So I try to put that first. As far as budget goes, we're pinching pennies all the time, but I have a good job. She has a good job. So, when something comes up and I need to spend money on it in order to, in terms of hunting gear and stuff like that, like if I got to buy broadheads, if I got to, spend my own money on a bow setup, and that's not going towards our wedding or our honeymoon or down payment on a house for us, it's understandable to her. And part of that, like you said, Jacob, is because I'm making some little bit of money off of it, I can quote unquote say, like, I'm doing this as a job. This is like what I want to do in the future. It's like, it's not like I want to ever just make money off of hunting. Like, it's not really my goal, but having a little bit of offset and some proof and a tax write-off whenever it comes to buying some new gear every now and then, because of the mobile hunter and the wild calling and all that stuff, makes a big difference in being able to put that money forward. And then I would say, like, the last piece of advice I have that's actually maybe unique to what you guys have said so far is I've really established with her that I would not be myself if I wasn't hunting.
Sure.
Like, it's, you don't tell a fish not to swim. You don't tell a bird not to fly. Like, they have to do that. And she knows what it's like when I get caged up and I can't go out hunting. Like, we had a streak with like 3 weekends in a row that I had stuff on weekends. I had maybe 2 weekdays I could hunt, And, looking at Josh and Chris, I felt lucky to have those 2 weekdays. But it really just didn't feel like enough. It felt like I wasn't getting out and learning anything about these deer. The particular buck I was after, a lot of people were after him as well. And they were far closer and could hunt a lot more than I could. So it put a lot of stress on me. And like, I just hit this wall and this horrible, like, mental health period. And I remember like the third weekend of that streak, we had some plans with, I don't know what it was, with her friends or something like that. And she had told them in advance, like, hey, he can't go. Like, he's got plans this weekend. So I went all the way up to that weekend, like, expecting for us to do something. And she was like, hey, you're off the hook. Like, go out there and hunt. I can tell you need it. So the last piece of advice I would say is establish that is something that's very important and necessary in your life. And try to, be with a person, only be with a person that understands that, and encourage them to find something in their life that is equally important to them and that they can invest their time into. For Caitlin, that's her friends and her job. She pursues helping people even in and outside of her job. And so whenever there's an opportunity like that, I'm very happy to have her go do that. And she's very happy to have me hunt, kind of in a reciprocative way. So I would say those are my key points in that area, essentially.
Right.
I just want to add one thing to that. I've learned extremely over the last 4 or 5 years is like, if I know, like, even if it's a prime day and it's just she's had a really bad day, the kids have drove her crazy, I need to go. Like, I'm going to knock another tag off the list if I go. I'm probably going to kill one. So it's less time that I'm going to be gone if I go. But if I know that it's going to burn her out or it's going to piss her off, if I go out there, I'm not even in the game. I'm not making their decisions.
Yep.
I'm guilty. I'm not crystal clear on stuff. And I've gotten to the point where I won't even go. Like, it's fine. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to do something. And man, the days you got off, the days it's 90 degrees in freaking late October, get your ass in that house and start cleaning. Do something. Go pick the kids up, get some dinner ready. You need to be building up like
preference points
of shit that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's my turn.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Brownie points all over the place. And I think I've heard it from a lot of people, really. But I remember you making a point to say that at the beginning of the season, and it stuck with me too. And it just makes a big difference to, roll up your sleeves and get a bunch of stuff done. But I will say, you don't really know how you're going to feel in that moment until you spend that day at home versus in the outdoors. And I will say, I have felt awful going on that hunt when I know she was overwhelmed, and I rarely do it anymore. And I honestly feel great when I'm home. Like, I feel great knowing that I was there for her, doing the thing I was supposed to do, and I feel a lot better that I was able to make her happy, and, probably wouldn't have statistically killed that deer that day anyways, but that's a really, really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Very good point.
Yeah. To add to that, sometimes it's not only the wives that need to win, it's also the little ones at home. Like,
absolutely.
There was a couple times this season where I knew my little guy just needed a daddy day. So I stayed home, spent the day with him, gave the wife a break. We did something together all day. Cause I could tell if I was at work or in the woods a little too much. And you can tell in the way they act and stuff at home. I would come home, he'd be very, kind of clingy, a little bit more than usual. I could tell that he missed me. I was like, okay, I need to stay home a day, and then we're just going to spend the day together. Sometimes those are absolutely necessary. And I never feel bad about missing a day in the woods when it comes to that.
Yeah. Right. You aren't kidding. The other thing you can do too is go grab little guy up, little girl, whoever, all your kids. If you're me and Emery over here with litters running around, just take them out and go for a hike in the woods and let them pick up acorns or something. And you can get out and kind of minorly satisfy that craving, even though you don't get to go hunting, but you might get them addicted. How about yourself, man, when it comes to time, proximity to your home, budgeting your time and money and everything with family and everything?
So I was thinking about what you said earlier, kind of like, when you first started, you're like a kid in a candy store. You're like, I want to go to all these different places, right? There's a big sense of adventure, I feel like, that kind of rejuvenates you when you're out there, scouting all these new places. And I was like that too, man. I was like, e-scouting, I'm like, I want to go here, I want to go here, I want to go here. It has changed over the past few years now that, I have a little one at home. He's a little over 2. We're expecting a second one in July. So time constraints are going to be even smaller. Oh, I see you raising your hands, Emery. I don't think did I tell you that?
You told me.
Okay. I can't remember if I did.
We're just happy for you.
You said something
That's
about
what it's like to have a
naming
friend.
Jacob too.
Yeah.
After me.
I can't remember who I've told and who I haven't told.
He's naming his kid DO3 Outdoors. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
But so what I have done over the past few years, knowing my time is a little bit more limited and knowing I want to spend time with my kids as much as, possible. Instead of scouting lots and lots of different areas, I've kind of honed in on a couple of different areas. I hunt Ohio and Kentucky pretty often, and I'm just trying to build familiarity with a couple places. So there's 1 or 2 pieces in Ohio that I plan on. I hunted this year. I hunted last year. I plan on scouting it more this year. Time-wise, proximity, I don't want to get too specific on this podcast so people aren't figuring out where I am.
How
Usually,
many miles do you drive from your house?
Right. How long
why I
does it
didn't
take
answer
you
that
when
part.
you put your kayak in?
I know about that 2.5 hour limit, or it's probably my limit from as far as driving from home, and I definitely hit that in some places. But I don't get anything that's really further than that. Just because I know it's going to limit the amount of like how often I can go there and scout, limit my hunting opportunities because I know it's going to take me, that long to get there. It's probably going to take me an hour or 2 to hike in. And then you got, all that time to drive back. That's an entire day.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So kind of knowing the limit as far as like how far away from home, how far your drive is important. And I think honing in on a couple areas close to the house and getting intimate with those is kind of what I've done because that has allowed me to scout more. It's allowed me to hunt more, just more opportunities in the woods, I would say. And as far as like timing goes from a scouting perspective, because I want to relate it back to that because I know a lot of our listeners are getting in that mode of scouting. I will leave early before anyone's awake. I will try and leave very early, get somewhere before it's daylight. That way, by the time I hike in, I really want to be where I want to start scouting when the sun comes up.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to start walking when the sun's up. I want to get there to the spot when the sun's up and then just start scouting right away. It optimizes my time and I can, go somewhere, cover, quite a bit of ground, 4 or 5 miles, get back out and get home at a reasonable time. I mean, we did that this past year and we'd be home by like noon, 1 o'clock sometimes.
And this is your weekends, right, Josh?
Yeah. Now, I mean, this year I'll have a couple days during the week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I spend a couple days at home now doing a lot of the work for the expos. So I can move some stuff around if need be. So that definitely helps. But I still have to like get my little guy from daycare by 3:30, 4 at the latest. And I know if I'm down in Kentucky, right, I have to account for all that drive to get back in time, make sure I beat traffic and everything, get him, then make sure get home in time to start dinner before my wife and that gets home. So there's still some limitations there.
Absolutely.
As far as budget goes, Chris, I'm very cheap. I don't like to spend my money. I still have some now over the years. Over the past few years, I've gotten new hunting clothes and stuff, but I had clothes from high school for the longest. I still have hunting clothes from high school in my bins, And Christmas is a time where I ask for a lot of hunting things, cameras. Sometimes I'll ask for batteries, right? Just just little things because I don't like to spend my money. And then I could tell my wife, like, hey, I didn't spend any of our budget like on this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I can't say anything because I'm like throwing stuff into a damn grocery cart trying to hide $40 here and there.
yeah,
Chris, you made a good point with getting them involved in it too. Like that's something that you also said, like, you won't be able to really get the full time of your scout or hunt in, right? That's true, but I found that it enriches the experience a little bit. Like getting someone into hunting, you get a bit of that feeling as if you were
Yeah.
getting into hunting, and you remember all the things. You remember that like wonder in your eyes, really, that you get to see those moments where your world just lights up in a brand new way, and to be a part of that, and to be the we'll say the captain that set that off, or the coach that set that off, is really, really special. It's better than shooting a deer yourself. And my favorite hunts this year were hunts with Caitlin where we didn't see a damn thing, or we saw a fawn or something like that. That was just awesome. So getting them into it bit by bit. At first it was just, hey, we're going to go on a hike, and now we're going to go on a hike and go off trail, and now we're going to go on a hike, go off trail, and I planted an antler for you that you don't know about. And then we're going to slowly like get into it. Right. And so as we did that, like, it was really cool, because she started to have her own drive for scouting, and now she wants to go on hunts. Now she wants to be a part of the kill. And there's lots of days where she doesn't want to do that. Right. And I guess we all have terrible days too, is another good point. Like, we all have bad days that are just, you totally, she gave you the green light. You're going out hunting tonight. You're going out hunting after work. For me, it's like, I got the green light to have an hour-long hunt after work. Like, I'm jacked up. I know an hour is all it takes, a lot of the time.
Especially in
So
November.
I'm like, I'm like 45 minutes from my house is the absolute furthest I can go, because I have to be back at night before she goes to bed, and stuff. And then, I got an hour, right, to make it count. So sometimes you're greenlit to go out there, and out of the blue, she'll have a horrible day. Or there'll be times where she has stuff and I've just had a bad day, but I'm a guy, so you just kind of shove that down, right? But one thing that Caitlin and I have done that we've actually recommended to some other young couple friends of ours that everyone said it's worked really well is mandatory wine and pizza nights. Where, dude, it's so great. Like, if you're on a diet, it's an immediate excuse to cheat on that diet. There's ways you can make a healthy pizza together. That's actually pretty fun. There's a whole bunch of other, girly little details I could throw into that. But basically, it's hey, you had a horrible day. We have just a code word, wine and pizza night, and we're going to drop everything we have and be there for each other in this moment, and eat some good ass food, have some wine, watch a movie, and you just become a lot closer through like every bit of like struggle that you go through.
Yeah.
And so part of it's just the concept of knowing that your significant other's willing to do that, and that, like, knowing that they would drop everything they have in an instant to be there for you, even if it was just a poor day, makes you want them to go out and do the thing that they love. And it makes you want them to like have the freedom to go out on a hunt or hang out with their friends or whatever. So give a little and you'll receive quite a bit back. This is something I would say.
Sure. When you guys are, when we're talking about picking a spot, are you paying attention and like selecting certain types of terrain that you're like, you feel more confident in, or in it? Like, would you say that that's something that might help people out?
So in my experience, I'm going to have enough places scouted by the time season opens. And if it's maybe a place I'm going during season, you guys know I've had a lot of success in lowlands, in the swamps, in the water, like using my boat. I've had some great luck in the hills. I've had great luck in low pressure and high pressure places. I'm just going to go wherever the hottest sign is at that, the time period. I'm not going to hunt. I used to just set my mind to be like, I'm going to find somewhere I've got to use my kayak. I'm not doing that no more. Like,
Right.
I'm going to go hunt the deer that I feel like is the easiest to kill, the one I can kill the earliest in the season, whether that's, the first day of Kentucky, whatnot. But once the seasons start overlapping, that's when I start looking for that most consistent deer, the hottest sign. And I'm going to go in there and try to take him out just as quick as I can. So let's move on to the next one, not taken away from that deer or anything like that. But, when you've got a couple tags in your pocket, the goal essentially is to go in as little amount of times as you can and kill the deer and get out.
Yeah. Strike quick.
Yeah.
But as far as picking a habitat or terrain, whatnot, I'm not the guy for this. I mean, anything is great with me. I've even gotten to the point where I'm got a spot where I'm hunting super close to a road, and I swore I'd never do anything like that. But it's one of the things. It's like where you find the deer, go hunt the deer. Don't go hunt somewhere you want the deer to be, because that's ignorant and stupid, and you're just going to take a lot of really pretty sunrise pictures.
That is the truth. I love it. How about you guys?
I'll go next. I do think if someone is very familiar with a certain type of terrain that they have consistently had success with, I think if you're e-scouting, especially in different states, or if you're looking at a new WMA or new public land, I do think focusing on something initially with what you've had success in the past with will create efficiency and make the process a little quicker for you. So like an example, like we've all talked to Jake Bush, right? A lot of times when he's going out of state, he hunts similar terrain. Like I know he's talked about hunting Indiana. When he hunted Kentucky, all the terrain was very similar because he's familiar with it. He has a process with it, right? It creates efficiency for him. So I do think that is a good recommendation for people if they're looking to branch out, but maybe limited on time and resources.
It's like a shortcut, essentially.
Yeah.
Like it's what you already know. Like let's cut this learning curve down. Like why would I want to go somewhere? Like unless it's just like an out-state trip and it's an adventure, then you're going to learn, and you may get lucky and kill, or you may just learn the area, kind of like I did with Iowa this year. But why waste time when you know what you know and just tackle it from there?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off like that.
No. That is a good point. For myself personally, I tend to, like I said earlier, I kind of focus on just a couple different areas that I really want to become familiar with. And the terrain is different from Ohio to Kentucky. I would say like two different terrain types, but they are areas in which I feel like provide a lot of opportunity as far as quality deer. Just from e-scouting perspective, they have everything I'm looking for, right? They have habitat diversity. They have multiple food sources in and around them. There are places where the deer can escape pressure. It just each of these places have a recipe for what I believe can hold quality deer. And that's why I've kind of gravitated towards them, even though they're two completely different terrain types.
Okay. I like it. So if you guys couldn't tell, essentially what we're getting at is really no matter your situation, you got one kid, no kids, 3 kids, everybody has time that's just dwindling. We're all busy. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. So your starting point is super, super important when you're talking about budgeting your time to scout, time that you're going to be able to hunt. You have to look at it from a realistic point of view. Are you going to get a week to go on an out-of-state hunt? Are you going to get weekends at home? Are you going to get an hour like Sklenar gets after work? Or are you going to be able to have the wife take off work and be with the kids and you've got a week at home or whatever? There's all kinds of different situations. But for the most part, I think we could agree that most of us don't have all the time in the world, no matter what the hell the situation is. So you're really, you're trying to navigate all this while navigating the monetary aspect. And that can be tough. So if you plan it out, when you structure things like this, it can kind of give you a realistic point of view, and then you can kind of plug that into what you think you want to do. Well, somebody wanting to say something?
I was just going to say, like, that's a great point to plan it out and be willing to adapt. Like, in wrestling, like it's really good to have a routine before a match, right? It's really good to listen to a certain kind of music, to accelerate your warm up in the same way, so you're peaking right at the time, eat the same things, drink the same amount of water, all that stuff. You're preparing. You need to have this routine. But let's say that 3 matches finish up super quick. It's 3 consecutive pins, and now you're up, right? You need to have that routine, but be able to adapt and break it if the opportunity arises for you to go early, or if you might have to miss a day. You have to go about your life just taking care of the things that you can control, and not worrying and being all pissed off about the stuff you can't.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to just like be really mad at your wife if she has a horrible day, and like resent that you have to spend the time at home and stuff. But you can't control that that's going to happen. You can't control having a good attitude about it. You can't control making the most of every situation that you're in, even though it wasn't your fault that you're here at home right now when your target buck's daylighting on camera. You can't control being the best husband you can, and taking care of her, making her feel better. And in reality, that's just going to make the situation better down the road when you say, hey, you're not going to hang that situation over her head like it's a debt, but basically, hey, I was here for you when you were going through struggle. I really need this time right now, and I hope you understand.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing, is just like everyone has a different situation, and you might not be able to control, and you certainly can't control how much time you get. And I get only a couple weeks of vacation, and I could complain about that, or I could just make that vacation the most kick-ass time I can and coordinate with buddies to make sure I'm having time with friends. And I guess there's all sorts of stuff that each of us could complain about in our own respect, with having kids, not having kids, work, all this other crap. But it doesn't really do us any good, and it certainly doesn't lift each other up. So we don't really spend much time, like, quote unquote, just bitching.
Right.
we kind of just get after what we can, and I feel like it means more when you have success under those circumstances, when you're doing the right stuff.
Absolutely. I have to shout a couple people out too. So, and I mean, your name starts with J, but you're not Jake or Jacob. But so Jake Bush actually was the one that taught me that, this whole postseason scouting was like, your foundation. So that's part of the inspiration behind this. But the first time I ever interviewed Mr. Jacob Emery about travel turkey hunting, my brain was sitting next to me, melted with how much planning this SOB did. And I'm just sitting there like, no wonder this son of a bitch went and killed like 8 turkeys all over the damn country. Oh my God. Like he had it all laid out. And I'm like, damn, man, I should like try to apply this. So, kind of comes back to you as well, brother. But, so kind of moving on a little bit, and again, if you don't have it yet, we're not sure what we're going to be able to do beyond this point for you, but essentially budgeting out your time, budgeting out your money, and getting those, preference points with the wife and the kids, and making sure everything is squared away in the wallet, at home, at work, etc., is a very important part. And then having a realistic approach. Don't be me and think you're going to conquer the world in a season or whatever. Go out and have a realistic approach with your time, money, and everything else. And you should be able to start out in a good spot. We're going to kind of switch gears from that, though. And it's kind of where, everybody here has their own little tricks of the trade here. But I've always been impressed by my buddy, Jacob Emery, with his e-scouting abilities. So I want to talk a little bit about e-scouting, how you would prepare starting now. We're picking a spot, and, how would you go about that when it comes to, the useful apps that you use, plotting out access points and, edge, interior edge, blah, 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 blah.
Sorry. Can I add to this question?
Yeah.
So, for the listeners, I feel like we've all kind of hit on a lot of the stuff closer to home. But I know, Jacob, you were really good at planning like out of state trips.
Yes.
Like you were really good at that. So with what Chris said, could you also like put that, I mean, for my own personal reasons too, just because I'm curious as to what you're going to have to say. But as far as like an out of state, let's say it's like I said that 2.5 hour drive time frame, right? Kind of sticking around home. But if I want to plan like an out of state strip, as let's say it's, you know, I can't make it a day trip. It's like out west somewhere, and it's going to be like a legit like 4 or 5 day trip. How do you go about planning and budgeting that, and then like the e-scouting? Like what creates your efficiency?
So got like this rule of thumb in my head. If I'm driving like up to an hour and a half to hunt somewhere, I can make a day trip out of that.
Mm-hmm.
An hour and a half to 3 hours, you know, from the house. Yeah, it just depends on your expectations, and sometimes you can't have high expectations, especially if your tag is only good for a week or something stupid like that. Like, um, you know, going out west is totally different because you're looking at, you know, for you guys, I don't know how far you are from it, Jacob, but like when we went to Wyoming turkey hunting, that was a quote unquote 6 day trip, and we burned 2.5 or 2 days essentially of it driving, you know, of huntable hours. So all those things you got to take into account of what you can get away with. How much time do you have off? For instance, somebody said something about preference points, but you said preference points about the wife. So everybody that wants to kind of do this needs to get like a list of states in their head, and you need to start buying points.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to get on a rotation of like, okay, this is where I'm going to have enough points to draw this tag this year. I'm going to go ahead and buy points here and here and here. So I've got them. I'm not going to hit those states this year. Now I'm going to focus on this. So like my Iowa trip that I had this year, like I was scouting for that thing in June. And essentially just a little bit at a time and get on there and just pick out like these super large tracts of land, which are, you know, essentially what everybody looks at first. And then within that kind of pick out something maybe somebody's not seeing. And then at the same time, let's start marking some stuff that's maybe overlooked. I found a lot of times, I don't even know why I'm saying this. There's a bunch, I don't know why we do this shit. We'll sit here and give all these tips away and then be like, why the hell is there a truck at every pull off? But like some corp ground, TVA ground, it's not even shaded public on like Onyx or Spartan Forge. That's just the name of it, but it's huntable. You know, you've got to really dig in and find that kind of stuff. But like for that trip, like to Iowa, I was talking about, you know, as I got closer and closer and closer, and I made my phone calls and I looked up harvest records and you know, even reaching out to people that had been there during the shotgun seasons. I don't want your spot. I just want to know, have you been seeing standing crops? What was the hunter pressure like? Was this, you know, track ran over like a girl that's been on Tinder for 3 years? I mean, like, get all your ducks in a row and then start. I like to mark shit off more than I like to just have 1,000 pins. So I'll start with a bunch of spots that I want to look at. Some that are easy access, some that are more traditional, and some that are kind of like off the wall. And some of those you're not going to know until you get there anyways, what's going to work and what's not going to work. But just kind of narrow all that stuff down when you get closer to the time. And I don't know. Once I got there this year, the spot that I was so excited about, I've been looking at it since June. It was a complete bust. Yeah. So it was like, okay, my number one spot was a piece of crap. Here we go. Let's start driving. And I covered 75 miles the first day, just bouncing spot to spot to spot to spot until I finally found exactly what I was looking for. And it just about freaking paid off. But let me see. Well, I wrote down in my notes a little bit because Chris sent me that thing, and I'm awful about just jumping on the spot, but something I wrote down. So e-scouting, when you tell somebody like, you know, what are you looking for? Everybody jumps to just looking at a map, and that's not all e-scouting is. Like that, looking at a map almost does you no good in some instances. Like you got to get your ducks in a row. And that's when I was talking about, like, you know, looking up the harvest records. You need to be looking at, Is there a butcher shop close? Do I want to get my deer processed while I'm out there? Is there an auto shop? Is there a tire shop in case I get 2 flat tires? Where am I going to sleep? Am I going to sleep in my truck? Am I going to park in a Walmart parking lot? Am I going to grab a $50 a night room? Am I going to crash with a friend that maybe lives somewhere close? These are all things that you need to get your ducks in a row before you get there. And it'll be a lot less stressful when you get there and you can just focus on killing something versus what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, you're just giving away all the secrets.
Yeah, sure.
I do like the harvest results. That is one of the things. I won't mention a state, but that is, and I actually might have picked this up from
Hawaii.
you, Emery. Yeah, it's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But looking at the harvest results, and I basically did this to try and pick out where I felt like there was a better odds of me harvesting a buck, and I did this early on. Essentially what I did was I looked at the buck harvest rate and divided that by like how many acres was there. So I essentially broke it into like how many bucks were killed like per 100 acres, right? And some of them would be like, okay, there's 3 bucks per 100 acres or whatever. I'm like, well, that's probably getting hit pretty hard.
That's a Tinder girl.
Yeah, if that's the ratio. And then some were, 1 buck every 100 acres, 1 buck every 200 acres. So I'm like, okay, either one or two things. One, it's not getting a lot of pressure, or two, it is difficult to hunt and people just aren't getting on these deer. If I can just figure out how to hunt it right, I may have a greater success.
Yep.
So I think that's a good point.
It's a hell of a point. How about you, Skleo?
Yeah, with out of state trips, I know a lot of guys look up the harvest statistics and the Boone and Crockett records and stuff like that. Just knowing someone in the area, like biologists from the DNR, honestly tell a lot of information. Jacob, I'm gonna not stress at all the point you made about lands that may be public that are not marked public. Don't look into that at all. There's always people there. That's for the crackheads say.
It's always the residents that don't know too. Like they'll be like,
"Oh
you
yeah,
can't hunt that." It's like, yeah, I took the effort.
You're like,
to
you're
make a
right.
phone
Never mind.
call,
I'm a
and
poacher.
I found out that it was, and you're too lazy.
We have a guy on our team actually that we had to literally be like, hey, there's literally a like sexual looking deer hunting place a mile from your house. What the hell is wrong with you?
You're like, you could walk here. I never even looked at that.
Me and Josh are planning. We're booking the Airbnbs for the expos, and I was like, Josh, watch this. And I just like pulled up on X, and I was like, whoop, hey, tell me how great this looks. And it's like, oh my God, I'd hunt there. We kind of questioned whether or not we were going to even tell him about it. I told him I was going to go kill a buck and throw it in his yard.
He ended up going there, and he found a really nice buck.
Found
there.
a booner.
Yeah, we're like, what have you been doing? It's right by your house.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I mean, places that it doesn't look good, like out of state, it's kind of hard to do, but like especially in state, places that don't really look good. I mean, you have the time in the years if you're not moving around a whole bunch, and again, things you can control. If that's your situation, make the most of it. But like you have the time to learn a whole bunch of areas. Don't just stick to re-refining all the same stuff you did hunt. Like there's a couple different approaches. It's like, I want to kill a deer really bad this next year, and I want to kill a deer in the future, and I want to get better at deer hunting, which is, I think, Jacob, why you don't have the terrain that you kill deer in. Like you kill deer in every terrain because you took the time to learn it all and bust your ass at it. And like, that's why we commend like Andy May and stuff like that. The guy goes out any terrain, any state, and gets it done in 3 days or less. I mean, he's more predictable than a weatherman at this point. Like, I mean, just you have to decide what you want out of this sport, and we'll call it a sport because it could be 100 different things to 100 different people, but you have to decide what you want out of hunting, and you have to orient your journey in that way. And for me, I want to become a great hunter, and I want to use the challenge of hunting to inspire others and become a better person myself in every respect that I can. And through that, I look for every different kind of terrain I possibly can, look for areas that look dead, because that's my highest opportunity for education. Stuff that doesn't seem great, and all of a sudden there's a giant buck there. Well, that's a huge learning opportunity. Really, really monotonous areas without trees, those are huge. And just
I've seen you, Chris.
what? Trump huge?
You got
We're
a
not
grin on
trying
his
to
face
give it all
when you-
away. Damn, man.
Sorry, Jake.
No, you're good. But yeah, just stuff that you wouldn't really think a mature buck would be in. And if there happens to be a buck in there and every other person thought the same thing and didn't go pursue that area, then it's very likely that whatever deer is in there, however dumb he may be, he's probably pretty old from not getting shot at.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. Man, the whole, basically when you can't get in a tree, it pisses you off. But and anybody I know that's a good hunter knows that that's where you're going to find them. Now, whether or not you're going to be able to get in there and kill them, which I'm pretty sure that's where Andy May goes. There's a secret, everybody. I figured it out. He just walks through it, stalks deer, and kills them. No, this is some gold information. Do you guys feel like you have any good tools where, like, for example, something with a mapping app or anything that helps you identify food or, anything that might provide quality cover or year-round browse or anything? You want to touch on that a little bit? Maybe why don't we actually start with Josh here?
Colors.
What'd you say, Sklenar?
Multiple colors on a map.
Yes.
I already know Josh's answer.
So what Jacob said is multiple colors on a map, which, yes, does indicate to me, if I'm looking at a map, some habitat diversity, different shades of green and stuff in different areas. But when I'm using these different apps, a lot of times, I'll use Onyx, Spartan Forge, Google Earth. I use multiple different sources to try and look at different things. I'll backdate things, look at some old maps, historical maps, current maps. But I like to look in areas where there's been cuts or burns, because I know there's a lot of habitat diversity there. That's one of the main things I look for if I'm e-scouting an area, especially a new area that I want to go to, is the habitat diversity.
Yeah.
Like, are they cutting? Are they burning? If not, okay, what do they have there? If I'm looking on a map, like, okay, this area, I can tell there's multiple different tree types. I might look at leaf off imagery and be like, okay, these look like oaks. These look like cedars here. This looks like it was a grown up native field, right? I'll look back at springtime imaging and be like, okay, I can see some different variations of green in here. So just the diversity is what I look for. And those areas I tend to hone in on. And going back to what you guys were saying as far as like places where there are no trees, right? I was alluding that earlier when I was referring to places that are hard to hunt. That is pretty much what I look for. Like, okay, where can they not get to? Because I know deer are going to be able to escape hunters or hide in places where they're just not going to get hunted, because you can't get in a tree, and half of those grown up fields or even those cuts, right, you'll get grasses and stuff that are over your head. I've been in places where they're 6-7 foot tall. I'm like, well, you can't get a tree and you can't sit on the ground because you're not going to see them till they're a few feet away from you. So those are some nice little places where I've found some bucks hiding.
Hell yeah. How about you, Skleo?
Oh, I made so many videos on e-scouting and stuff. Truth be told, I was finishing it up at the beginning of this podcast too. But man, leaf off imagery in marshes is huge. UAV imagery is huge. Any kind of recent imagery you can get from, like Josh said, Google Earth or anything like that. As many CalTopo is huge. any different mapping sources you can get that can confirm or deny certain things on a map that you see in one version, and just kind of show how the area is progressing and aging over time as well. Just there's so much. I mean, I could go on for hours about like little different tips and tactics with mapping. I don't want to bore everyone with that because I feel like I've talked about it so much. But like for me, the big things with hill country is LiDAR leaf off imagery is big for me. Seeing what oaks are still holding their leaves when everything else is leaf off. That's very big. Looking for shaded slopes, shaded relief in Cal Topo, looking for sun exposure, looking for thermal cover, tiny little reliefs in that the 2-foot contour kind of LiDAR reliefs with like benches, complex knobs, and stuff like that. That's what I'm looking for in hill country. First and foremost in every country is access on where the hunter's getting, writing that stuff off as much as possible, doing your laps around for your typical bedding, all sorts of stuff, bedding, food, draw up your plan for a scouting trip, and then refine and go back after a couple like boots on the ground scouting trips and determine what you overlooked yourself and just dedicate a day to stuff that you did not picture a big buck being in. And don't dismiss a place because of lack of sign either. Like understand where there's going to be sign and where there shouldn't be. Like if you're in a giant mass of buckthorn, for instance, there's not going to be many rubs because they don't rub giant dead buckthorn.
Right.
So kind of adjust your scope based on where you're at and what you need to figure out about that area. And then if you're on a time crunch, like we've been talking about, it's really easy to take like the top of a ridge or what's at the bottom of a ridge and use that to quantify or qualify what kind of buck is using the bedding, because that buck on the bedding is likely exiting, in a marsh, the trail that ends at the food source, like the island or whatever, that leads all the way back to his bed that you can see in leaf off imagery. Like he's going to make big sign where he hits that food source. And so if I have time to hit one bedding area, right, one little isolated area way back in a cattail marsh, I'm going to walk the perimeter of the island and I'm going to see 5 choices. And it's like, no sign, tiny rubs, giant. I'm going to spend the little time I have going to that specific bed of that giant and figuring out a setup from that. Could there be a giant at the end of those other trails? Yeah. But I'm going to optimize for like the most likely case. In marshes, LiDAR doesn't always work perfectly in marshes because sometimes it thinks that the tops of the cattails are the ground. And it kind of graphs really weird. But marshes, specifically really monotonous cover that is over the head height of a deer. If you don't know what that cover looks like in satellite imagery, go to a map that you do know and take some mental screenshots of what cattails looks like versus like that small, loud, triangular grass versus, normal swamp grass and stuff like that, switchgrass, phragmites, all that stuff. And mark those off in your mind, take a picture of it, and then mark your location on the map. And that way you can start to copy and paste that and apply that to a bunch of different areas. Like Jacob Emery, you were talking to me about e-scouting this place that looked like really wet before the season. And I was like, man, it looks like it's not really tall cover and a lot of like dead trees. And that was some stuff that I had not found, at least in Wisconsin, which could be way different in the place that we were looking at. Didn't find a lot of mature bucks bedding in that particular area. No idea if that helped you at all or not, but
that place is dead. It's over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's due to a factor like humans or something like that. But basically, I only knew in this other state what that cover looked like because I had marked what it looked like in my state. So take what you do know and apply it to a bunch of other situations. Try to draw up a good route, execute on that route, and then go back, reassess what were you wrong on, what were you right on, and what did you overlook. It's kind of the gist of that. And there's so many different resources for tiny little nitty gritty tips and tricks and stuff like that. So
sure,
I don't even want to go too far into that.
I wanted to hit on something that you just said that I think is a really good point that I don't think many people utilize. And myself, speaking for myself too, I underutilize it. But when you're out scouting in person, right, and you're identifying like different trees, different cover types, like whip out your map while you're there and then zoom in and then look at it.
Yeah.
And then mark it while you're there, identify it, if they're oaks, so if they still got the leaves, look at your leaf off imagery, get as, as updated imagery as you can, mark it. And then you can go back home later and utilize it and look through previous maps. Like, okay, what's this look like in this? Like, I know this is a grove, like a red oak grove here. Okay, what does it look like in the springtime? Okay, now I identify that. Now, if I'm e-scouting other areas, I have at least a good idea of what I need to look for. So I think that is very useful.
And to hit, oh, go ahead.
And in big wood situations and stuff like that, where I've hunted a lot of like no ag, really, really big sections of timber that were mixed with, I mean, obviously still hill country too, but where you find sign matters quite a bit. So just a random poplar grove and a giant mature oak timber area, like you can tell that in leaf off imagery. Okay, the tops of the trees are white in this tiny little area. And then individual cedars and stuff like that, you're going to see that in leaf off imagery all year long. Those are the places that I'm going to find rubs first. So if I got to figure out if a mature buck is using the ridge that's 500 yards long, but I don't have time to go to the end of that ridge, I'm going to go to the base of that ridge and check all the cedars, all the poplars, all the stuff that I expect rubs to be on if a mature buck's using that area. And then obviously with the leaves on, there's kind of a theory. I've yet to confirm this, but that those are the more fertile oaks, the ones that are able to hold onto their leaves longer and stuff like that, are the ones that might be producing more mass crop. But yeah, like you said, Josh, too, like chestnut oaks, red oaks, white oaks, they'll look different. And man, with UAV imagery, you could pick damn near the branch you want to sit on in it nowadays. But like you could get that specific with it. And I will say, Jacob, I know you have a lot of tactics and stuff with this, but I'm sorry, we just rambled so much on.
Well,
so
I
many
was
things that you
I was
know,
like almost mad at Josh because I've been waiting to throw that hot tip
I
out
figured
there
it was. I
the
saw it.
whole damn time. I was like, oh, that dog.
I'm sorry.
It's such a good, like, if you're standing there in the fall beside a freaking like a white oak, you know you're right there. Like you can zoom in, and especially like if you don't have leaf off imagery, like say like they're in that phase where they're turning red.
Yeah.
And it's like almost all the white oaks are red. And it's like, okay, cool, zoom out. And it's like, look at this giant patch of white oaks that's over here in this drainage with, and that just tends to be like, those are all white oaks.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to walk in there to exactly, I don't know, proof that, but based off of what color these leaves are, those are probably the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
You can time it up with sun exposure and kind of get a feel for which ones are going to drop first too. Like it's just the more sun exposed they are, the more they're going to drop sooner.
Really?
It's my experience. I don't know if that's what everyone sees, but like basically that they dry out and they start to drop their crop first at higher elevation tends to drop first, and then I have like the lower elevation shaded areas drop second. So Jacob, like great point with, I mean, that's something that I underutilize too, is like when you don't have leaf off, I hate it. But when you don't have it, using the time that the leaves are starting to turn to, that makes a huge difference. I will say it makes a giant difference with maples. If we talked about this on the podcast earlier this year, but like finding rubs and shavings at the bottom of trees, like you think it's fresh just because you see shavings there, but like the maples are an awesome thing, a giant maple grove, because they all drop at like the same time. It seems like every year, like you'll be walking through and it's crunchy oak leaves from last year, and then it's quiet because there's a blanket of maples like in a day or two if you get a high wind day.
Yeah.
And so like that's like a stark contrast. And like, you know, maple leaves, yellow. Okay, leaves off this whole section. I know this section's maples. I also know when it's going to be quieter to walk through there. There's a whole bunch with that. And so that's a really good point. And I do need to start utilizing actual leaf on and like taking the time to mark my spots when I'm sitting there. And going back to the map, I really, really like that.
you know, the only thing that I really feel like I could touch on, that I feel like I've been pretty successful with, is the LiDAR features. And like say we're gonna hit one of these 3-day quick hitters out of state, whatnot, I'm gonna go somewhere brand new. If you're hunting like super steep terrain, using that LiDAR to kind of like, you can pick out bluff gaps, you can pick out caves almost, so to speak. And Chris probably know a little bit what I'm talking about there. But just something that's going to funnel them deer around. And then of course,
He's not calling me a cave person, I promise.
you Neanderthal.
Yeah,
Knuckle dragger.
wearing your cloths.
Yeah, one of the big things that helped me a lot in Iowa was obviously like the ag feature on Onyx and whatnot. That really seems to help. And if you're never sure, maybe you're lucky and there's a road somewhere close. Go to Google Earth, hit the people icon. The road turns blue. Click on it. See if you see soybeans, corn, milo, or it's just like a big piece of crap native field that never holds deer.
That's another good point. That I have been utilizing that feature on Google Earth more. I utilize it more this year than I ever have. Of like, okay, I think this field is this, or am I able to use the little person icon and go on that road and then look around the road and confirm, oh yes, that is actually a planted crop field. Oh no, it's not. It's just like it may look like it's a crop field on the map, and then you get the little person on the road and you're like, wait a minute, like that is not used for crop. It's maybe they cut it just for hay or something like that.
Weeds.
Yeah.
It is extremely helpful if you are toting a kayak, a small boat, whatever. That is my number one way to find out if I can shove that damn thing off the road. Traditional boat ramps are great, but everybody puts in at them. So if you've got like a cove that you just need to freaking paddle 200 yards across to get to the other side, and you're technically now a mile from where anybody can access, but it's a mile to the freaking boat ramp across there. Like that saves you a lot of time and energy or battery or whatever it may be. And I can find out if I'm going to have to drop my water feather freaking 20 feet straight down, or I can park and just scoot it off in the woods about 20, 30 yards and I'm on the water. It's that's the number one thing I use for checking water access.
Yeah, that's it's really good for like out of state stuff. If you can't go there in person, and not everywhere has that feature where you can drop a person and check it out, but a lot of places do. That's a very good tool to utilize if you're like, man, what in the world does this look like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to use Google Earth and find out.
DNR mapping for each individual state often has imagery for access to parcels that is not going to be labeled in OnX because it's not open for hunting, it's not open for recreation, but it's open for access to the parcel. And so, I mean, being out of state, that's a huge point too. And another thing too is kind of like figure out the time of year that you're going and what the conditions are expected for that given year e-scouting. Like, what's the temperature typical in this area? What's the sun exposure
my next
typical
question.
in this area? Yeah, put yourself like everyone kind of gets a feel for what doe bedding looks like in a mapping, especially during the rut when you're seeing them locked down and stuff. Put yourself in bedding, downwind of doe bedding, like in buck bedding, downwind of doe bedding, between the two, stuff like that. Like start to refine your approach when you get to out of state for the time of year you're going. Like Nebraska, for me, it was like, well, it's 105 freaking degrees out every day. We're going to go by the water. Like where they're not going to be in the open sunlight most of the time, you'd assume, right? So like you can refine the approach so much also by the time of year that you're going in the area that you're going.
Yep.
I do want to take 1 second to sort of plug an episode we did because I think I always come back to it, and it really has changed a lot for myself. I joke around and call it the big buck algorithm. So Josh put together the Whitetail Apprentice series last year, and that dropped all fall long. And we did an episode with Aaron Warbritton on buck bedding tactics, and it's episode number 207. And whether you're e-scouting, boots to the ground, whatever, if you go back and you watch or listen to that episode, there are some very good key factors that, in my opinion, and I have actually used this now. I suck at life and have not killed a deer this year, but I got on deer every single time I applied it. And you can listen to the episode and figure it out for yourself, but essentially it's, pressure, constant water source, bedding, browse height, etc. I won't go too far into it, but I highly recommend really diving down that episode big time because it helped me find mule deer and elk out west. it helped me find mature deer here on pressured public where literally you would think that I was like miles deep. Like there's nobody hunting in that specific spot because it's so overlooked. But that's something that I would utilize big time when it comes to e-scouting, and then once you get to your boots on the ground. So now, does anybody have anything to add on e-scouting before we get to Jacob Emery's fitness plan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to.
I just want to say
No,
something
you go ahead.
really short. I'm not going to harp on it.
No, harp all you want.
I guess it depends on the type of hunter you are, but these quick 2, 3, 4 day trips, going somewhere blind, you can't expect to freaking come out with a booner. Like, honest to God, your first year going somewhere like that, it's a glorified scouting trip. So learn it, capitalize on a solid buck if you get the chance, and just go home happy. Go home learning that new area, use it to your advantage next year. Just keep it all in the bank and roll with it next year, and just keep bumping your expectations up. I was sitting there joking with Maddie earlier. We were watching. I think Aaron was hunting the late muzzleloader season in Iowa, the same area that I was in roughly. And it's like, I'm not knocking those guys, but they live. There's 3 or 4 of them that live in Iowa, and it's like, why aren't they just like constantly running cameras and finding these giant deer? Like,
Yeah.
I got super lucky. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I drove and scouted my ass off, but I was there 3 days and I had a chance at a giant, like 170 plus inch deer, and I freaking suck. But just that was the luckiest thing in the world. So when I go out of state, 3 or 4 day trip, whatnot, my expectations are the first deer that gets me going. It depends on the state I'm in as well. So I don't know. Just, you can't expect to go kill a giant. Just go out there and have fun and shoot the first deer that gives you a great shot and that gets you pumped.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I would say we're joking too. Like when we say we suck, we do suck, but we are joking. There are some people that I'm good friends with that in the hunting industry and out of it that have very severely linked their self-worth with their ability to kill the deer, and that don't ever do that. You're a completely different person than your ability to shoot an animal. We're 100% joking when we say stuff like we sucked for not killing a deer. That's not true at all. Like, it's honestly like anti-humor, because it's just so comical, kind of the people that do that. And I feel like we're just making levity of it because it's not exactly that's not even remotely close to how we feel. But Jacob, you're spot on. Is like, your expectations can't be that you're going to go out there and kill a booner or even kill anything at all. And you really can't lose when you go out there with the goal of just enjoying your experience out of state and learning. If your goal is to learn, you're going to knock that shit out of the park every time, as long as you put in some time and you put some boots on the ground.
I mean, so basically what you should do is you should just link up with this dude that's in Michigan that drives his drone down here and finds all these big deer, and you just buy a couple pins from him, or you get you some thermal optics. I can't figure out why everybody just bounces from state to state to state and comes out with a 180. I mean, it's just magic, just pure magic. They are God's gift to hunting. Sorry, I have a rant every podcast. It just come out. All right, I'm done.
Amazing.
Okay.
No, that is a good point, Emery. Just making realistic expectations, especially for those out-of-state hunts. If they're your first time, having realistic expectations it's hard to do sometimes. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, this past year, hunted on a piece in Kentucky that was, Chris and I had turkey hunted it, but it was new for me for as far as deer hunting. And had you deer hunted it before?
Trying to think. I don't think I had. Yeah. Last year, I think I put one sit in.
Yeah. So relatively new for both of us.
Yeah.
And we were hunting 2 completely different areas, like as far as like literally on opposite ends of this place.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had the expectation of shooting like a fairly high quality deer, like something probably 130s or higher. I had two encounters, two different bucks on that piece. One was opening day, and then the other one was in November on an all-day sit. And I mean, that's a pretty good success rate as far as a first year there.
We got to work on our closing strategies for opening days because we're really starting to develop.
Yeah, you had an encounter that same day.
Literally.
Same day.
This is the second time we've had this shit go down.
Yeah.
Where we're like, oh, hey, had this great buck in front of us in Kentucky on opening day. Didn't get him. Maybe next year.
Yeah. And in our heads, we had that image of is it Rob Schneider in one of the Adam Sandler films where he's like, "Oh, we suck again." Yeah.
Oh no, we suck again.
That's right. That's right.
But you're just not using the right model of drone, Josh. Is the issue.
In reality, that was a success, and I think anyone should say, or at least in their heads, that was a successful season, right? Even though internally we're like,
And to add to that, with expectations. And I don't mean to be like the meat guy or anything, because that actually drives me batshit crazy.
Yeah, your wife would disagree.
But Jesus, there is one aspect to hunting that I think a lot of people really don't get to experience, and that's pack outs with buddies. When you call your buddy and you got a 120, 130 inch, it really doesn't matter. When you kill a buck, hell, if it's a doe, a button buck.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, if you kill a deer and you and your buddy are out in the woods cutting this thing up and laughing and cutting up and all that, that's like a serious core memory that you end up with. And then, you have pictures, and then what that turns into, we all see this stuff. We all saw this kind of thing as kids with dads or grandpas, uncles, etc., where somebody killed a bunch of rabbits or had a good day on a deer drive or whatever. And those are core memories. And then they're used later on in life for teaching, kids or people you get into hunting, like, oh, let me tell you about what happened this day. And all of a sudden, you've got a story over and over and over to tell people, and it's something that you're going to enjoy. So try not, as Jacob said, don't get too caught up in inches too quick. There's plenty of people that come here. I have no idea how they do it. I got to believe that some people are pretty good at hunting and not droning, but there are people that come to Ohio and whatever and get on these big ass deer, and I'm like, what the hell is this dude doing? He's just like, oh, I'm here, got him, bye. And I'm just like, damn, man, you know what you're doing. So, but yeah, don't get caught up too much into it. Anybody can get lucky, anybody can have a good year, but don't get too caught up into the inches when you're there, first or second year.
Nope. Tell my girlfriend that.
Fiance.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, ex-girlfriend, fiance.
Chris's first. I'm gonna leave with this. Not leave the podcast. I'm gonna leave the subject with this. Chris come down to Tennessee on our group hunt, and he knows that I don't get caught up in the inches because he knew I killed something, but he didn't know what I shot. And I told him, go open that freezer and look. And I've got the video. It's one of my favorite videos. He opens it about halfway and shuts it and looks at me and just starts laughing. The deer was so small, I cut his fuzzies off the top of his head. I didn't even pack his head out.
He definitely aborted that deer. And it was
and that's
awesome.
Okay.
Well,
that
it is. Well,
fine.
what are you're allowed to kill like 16 deer a day down in the South.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. But that it's funny you bring that up because, here we are again, that core memory, but also when Stewie killed that good buck and like our whole group is out there packing it out. And I mean, that was just freaking phenomenal. I actually just went over that footage. I cleaned a card that I had found in my bag, and I just reviewed a bunch of that footage the other day. So kind of neat. What were you going to say?
I wanted to hit on something real quick. It's still with the e-scouting thing. Not to continue on this tangent, but I think Sklenar, you said something that caught my ear, right? You're talking about those oaks and the ones that keep their leaves a little later. Maybe more. How did you put it? More fertile, or more ones that produce more acorns?
I made that shit up.
Are you being serious?
No. I'm just fucking with you. No. Yes. So like oaks that keep their leaves longer. Yeah, right. Damn it! Don't clip me, dude. Come on. So I was referring to oaks that keep their leaves longer, being potentially more fertile. Ones that, I mean, look at the buck that is able to hold his antlers into April. You know, he's probably got enough nutrients to sustain those antlers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So oaks that are receiving the nutrients that they need to, they're not getting, you know, they're highly resistant to the sun's rays, and for whatever reason, they're in the right amount of shaded area, just the perfect amount of sunlight or the perfect position on a ridge. They're really mature, old, they're well shaded from a lot of the damage of the wind and elements and stuff like that, but they're still getting the sun access they need. They tend to hold their leaves longer. All of us can probably find some leaf off imagery where there's like one tiny grove of trees that still has its leaves, or you're driving through, I mean, right around this time of year, and you're, you know, maybe even earlier, let's say like for Wisconsin, it's probably December, you know, late November, late December, those kind of areas. And you find that grove of trees that is just holding its leaves way longer than the rest. Similar to the deer with antlers, the assumption, now, again, I said before, not verified, right? But the assumption is that those are the more fertile oaks. And honestly, I have found that those are the oaks that I have had more deer pay attention to. Like you talk in the South, like feed trees, super important and stuff. And honestly, I haven't found like a huge correlation to that. But generally, like where I'm finding the sheds, where I'm finding the most concentrated sign when all the trees start first dropping is those trees that did hold their leaves later. Now, I say that it's not verified just because I'm biased towards those trees right now. Like I've had this theory and I put most of my data in that area, but I haven't spent enough time putting my cameras and my attention on that area and every other area that doesn't have trees that keep it, you know, to like, if just because I proved it's right in some situations doesn't mean that it's a correct theory. I need to be able to not prove it wrong, right? I need to be able to verify that that's
eliminate
truly
the
the
confirmation
hot food source.
bias.
Yeah.
Right. So I still could have plenty of confirmation bias in that. But per my observations, I've noticed that, yeah, it tends to be a pretty hot area, especially at first drop, and especially if it's a food source that's kind of later in the year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it caught my ear when you said it because the place in Kentucky, all the red oaks were loaded this year. And when I believe I showed you this, Chris.
Yeah.
When I looked at the leaf off imagery, I mean, there were clusters of red oaks, and I confirmed they were red oaks because I had scouted the area that were, I mean, all the trees were no leaves, and then you just see these bright clusters of trees that still had their leaves. And the largest cluster actually was on towards the end of this ridge, and I had scouted that area. I can't remember. I think it was sometime in October. But there was plenty of reds. There were some whites and some chinkapins in the area too. And the ground was like marbles were just thrown all over the ground. Like it was absolutely loaded with acorns just everywhere. And when I looked at the map on the leaf off later on, I was like, oh, that is by far, like that cluster of trees sticks out in this sea of trees that have no leaves. And again, I mean, that was kind of the first time I had really paid attention to that. I'd have to go into other areas, you know, that on the leaf off, they don't have their leaves and confirm like you were saying. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because it kind of correlated with what I was seeing this year. Heck, I had that day I had an encounter with that buck. When was that? Like November 15th, 17th, somewhere in there. I had a red oak dropping acorns on my head. I had one land on me. I'm like, man. So I took it and I bit into it, and it was perfect. Right? You couldn't ask for a better acorn. And it was just raining on me while I was, during that hunt, and I had an encounter with that buck that evening. So
Another little trick. I don't think we've mentioned it, and forgive me if we have. We talked about using the leaf off imagery to see which oaks are holding their leaves still. Another trick you can do, let's say you're stuck with some fall imagery and you've got a bunch of red and gold and just the colors are phenomenal. Check out the top of the ridges and see which trees are just vibrant green still. And that generally, and especially, this is very relevant to that time period. Even though last couple years, red oaks have been king all damn year, it seemed. But lots of times you find them things dropping, in October and into November and even into December and later. But right around the time period when those leaves start to change, they start getting pretty hot a lot of times. And you'll be able to literally locate where the red oaks are, like right away. So just another little trick.
I wonder if it works like fruit. Like fruit's generally the more ripe it gets, like the more past its prime that it gets, the more sweet it gets, and kind of softer and stuff. Like you notice that with like mulberries and but like strawberries are really sweet right before they go bad and like all that stuff. It's probably not, but maybe that's a theory.
Yeah.
It's just like the later the oak lasts, maybe the longer it holds that acorn, the more hot that acorn is when it does drop.
I noticed.
Yes, cat man.
Yeah, man, that's an oak wizard. I noticed this year I found a lot of reds still holding rotten acorns, and I don't know how
That's interesting.
works out. And to be clear, all acorns taste like shit. So I really,
tannin.
I really couldn't tell you like, oh, this one's a little
Especially a
different,
red.
or, whatever.
It tastes like your nasty ass beer you like to drink.
Listen, girl, smearing off ice in it over here. My beer is delicious. My chocolate, peanut butter, diabetes milkshakes are phenomenal.
Yes.
But hitting on what Josh said earlier, that is another tactic. This has nothing to do with e-scouting, but in person, bite down. If you can squeeze the heck out of an acorn and it's still firm and not immediately caving in, take a bite out of it, bite it in half, and see, is it that nice, like sort of, we'll say minorly vibrant yellow, like a fresh nut should be? Is it firm, or
round pit in it?
is there a worm in it that you just tasted half of, or whatever? You really want to, check all that stuff out because it's important. And then, obviously go right into your feed sign, but that's a later episode. So to kind of finish this out a little bit, we're all fairly serious about hunting, and I know that Kevin Sorbo over here and
Kevin Sorbo
and Dr. Josh, that was the guy who played Hercules 20 years ago. That's you. But he lifts a lot and keeps in pretty good shape because he's 17 years old. And then Josh here, I'm gonna sort of pry some tips out of him as well, because he's helped me a lot. I am a senior citizen, and my knees and ankles and calves and feet, they're always hurting. Back, you name it, shoulders, neck, whatever. And I'll just be like, hey, Josh.
Quit bragging.
What's that?
Quit bragging.
I'll just be like, hey, Josh, here's what's wrong. And he'll be like, do these stretches and, drink plenty of water and do this. And shit's gone. And I'm like, damn, you're a real doctor. Like, they actually gave you a PhD for a reason. Cool. So I always used to joke around and call him a massage therapist, but I can't even do that anymore because he's always bailing me out. So with this next sort of subject matter with planning, I'd like to talk about getting our body ready. And I have not been the pinnacle of that, though. That is my goal for this year to better myself. So starting off, basic, talk a little bit, both of you. We'll have you go first this time. I want you to talk a little bit about the importance of like the basic nutrition, hydration benefits during and after scouting, and then how that might help things such as focus, problem solving, energy levels, etc., pliability, you name it.
So there are a lot of different ways. I mean, a lot of different ways you could take this, and it kind of depends on your goals, what your plans are as far as scouting goes, and all that. There's a lot that can go into it. And I will get the formality out of the way. I will preface this: I am not giving anyone medical advice, and it's just what my preference is, right? So there's the formality out of the way. If you have a medical condition, please see your primary care physician.
Call 911 immediately.
So I would say if you're going out scouting, you need to really identify kind of what your goals are and what you plan on doing, right? So and I'll just give an example. If I have not been that physically active and I want to go scout some serious hill country and spend some serious days scouting, if I go from very little activity to that type of activity, you're probably going to be hurting a little bit, right? If you go from flat land walking 100 yards to scouting with Jake Bush for a weekend, you're in for a little bit of trouble, quite a bit of soreness, maybe put yourself at a little risk for injury. So I would say identify what your goals are. Let's just keep with the hill country example. So let's say this year I want to experience hill country. I know, let's just use Ohio for example. You have hills that vary in elevation, let's say 300 feet or so. Some fairly steep stuff, some gradual stuff, but you're going to be side hilling quite a bit, going up and down. So you need to prepare for that. And I would say you need to give yourself at least a couple months of preparation. And even that might not be enough depending on your intensity that you're going out there and scouting. And Jacob, feel free to hit on this because I know you've done this preparation before. But let's just say my goal is to I'm going to go out scouting hill country. I would recommend, if you've never done it, starting kind of easy. It's like, okay, I'm going to do maybe a couple miles in the hills today, maybe a couple hours out there, and then just gradually work your way into it. If you haven't done it, that way you know kind of what to expect. You'll get an idea of how sore you might be. You're probably going to feel a lot in different places in your legs and ankles from going up and down hills, side hilling, all of that. So gradually working into it. But if you want to get to the point where you're putting in full days in the hills, I would say you need a pretty good strength training regimen. I usually recommend 3 to 4 days a week. In my opinion, whole body strength training is better. But you can also spend a few of those days really honing in on different aspects of your legs, hips, glutes, core, all the above. Jacob, what do you like to do as far as preparation goes?
Oh, so much stuff. There's a long list of things.
He has a boner right now.
Yeah, there's a ton of ways
first,
you could take this.
I just want to say, injuries and soreness are just a state of mind. That's just a choice. I'm just kidding. I kind of want to do a general call to action just for exercise in general, just to make it really easy for people to think about. This is a statistic by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. People that do 150 to 300 minutes of workouts per week, so 2.5 hours minimum per week, which is not much at all, can expect a 20 to 21% reduction in lower risk of all-cause mortality. So if you work out 2.5 hours per week, you can expect around a 20% reduced in risk of cancer, of every single thing that could possibly kill you. Your essentially your chances of getting through any physical ailment or mental ailment are far, far, far greater for just a very small amount of exercise at a moderate difficulty per week. So it's kind of remarkable, the benefits of exercise, and I could go on for forever about that, but to make it really simple, it's extraordinarily good for you. It's the only thing that, short of injury, you are not going to reach a limit on how much you benefit from. It's a linear increase. Now, Josh, specifically to your question, like to prepare, I don't think everyone needs to go out there and lift a bunch of freaking weights and like get super strong and do all this crazy stuff. But I think what's really important is to understand your purpose for working out and to work out for functional movements and the things that you care about doing. For me, I really care about being able to walk very far, being able to lift myself up and down things. I care about being able to climb a tree safely if I know I got to grab onto a limb, maybe being able to catch myself if my safety gear fails. I care about being able to drag a deer out, not just be that sack of shit that says, you guys take it for another 300 yards. I'm just going to like sit back. I'm really tired right now. That's what I really care about. So I'm going to practice and drawing my bow and holding it back for a very long time. So I don't have to draw while that buck is within 10 yards. Those are the things that matter a lot to me. So to be really general for everyone, garner your exercise towards those things. If you want to do hills, throw on a weighted vest and go on a stair stepper for a long time, or throw on a weighted vest and walk some hills. Like, there's a whole bunch of research around the impacts of jumping and the impacts of falling. The reason that a lot of people check into assisted service and assisted living is that they can't get up and down stairs is a major reason. The next major reason, which is the largest reason, is they can't do 1/2 of 1 rep of a body weight squat, which what that really means is they can't get up and off of the toilet without someone helping them. So practice the things that matter most in your life. So if that's getting up in hills, you don't even just get a box that can hold your weight, get steps and carry some weight up and down those steps and just step it over and over again. Practice a small hop off of that box, letting your knees take the impact of that and stuff like that. Those are all things that, very well could be the reason you break a hip and spiral into death very late on in your life.
Damn, man.
I mean, literally breaking a hip after 80 is pretty much a death sentence. It's the chances that you die after you break a hip or a knee.
It goes up significantly the older you get.
It is ridiculous.
Why do they die? Is it like infection or what?
No.
You just can't move. You can't sustain yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your risk of, so I can't remember the exact statistic, but I know if you're over the age of 65 and after you break a hip, like the longevity of your life can greatly diminish. And a lot of times it's
the
because
chances you die within the next 5 years is like 95%, or the next
Um,
year. I think it's a year or 9 months or something like that.
it's because your mobility is highly impacted, right? You can't move as well. I see a lot of individuals that are older and they have broken a hip, and man, they can, one, the pain can be quite a bit, but then two, if they're already weak and not that mobile, like it's just gonna make them weaker and less mobile than what they already are.
Damn.
It makes
So like
recovery can be pretty hard.
So like a lot of the portion of your life, your body is building skeletal muscle. So like your point of working out is to build skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is basically the medical term for muscle on your skeleton. Like it's just muscle in general. So you can build this skeletal muscle over time. You can build muscle, but eventually you're gonna hit some point in your life where your primary purpose of your immune system and everything that's maintaining your body is to now just make it last. It's no longer to put it on, right? You still can, but it takes significantly more effort. And that's why you see guys like freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger still lifting at his old age, and he's lifting heavy, but nowhere near what he did before. His body purpose is now maintained, right? So like the more muscle you have, the higher that peak is when you start to go downhill. The more time you've saved off for yourself in that deceleration period. So having a bit of muscle, not only does it make it so you burn more calories just walking around per day, because it takes calories to maintain that muscle. It kind of ensures that when you start to decline, you can make that decline as long as possible, and you can withstand injuries as long as possible. Your potential to recover from them is much greater. It's a huge thing, but beyond just having muscle, like the purpose of having muscle is not to look good. It's the most important thing for your health going down the road. So working out and being in good shape is really, really important. But I would say gear it towards the things you care about. For me, it's doing squats with weight, doing squats, stepping up, putting weight on my back and doing a stair stepper. I do sled pushes and sled drags. I'll take a rope and literally, like I'm dragging a deer, I will drag it as much as I possibly can. Exhaustive things with my lungs to try and increase my cardiovascular, essentially my stamina, things like that. That's really important to me. Now, if you're looking to do anything with bow hunting, obviously drawing your bow is going to be the best practice for, that movement is very hard to replicate. The stabilization and everything like that, extraordinarily hard to replicate with weights and bands and stuff like that. There's no good way to do it like as good as drawing your bow. So practice shooting, practice holding, practice making a good shot after a very long hold. Know what your limits are with that. And I will say, safely push yourself to failure in your last sets of your last exercises. A good saying, no growth happens outside of the comfort zone. So you have to push yourself. There's huge cognitive and mental benefits to pushing yourself to failure and trying to go further than that safely. I can't stress this enough. Safely push yourself to your limit and see if you can do a couple reps after that. That is where your growth is going to happen exponentially. That's super important if you want to get stronger, and just practice the things you care about. I would look up, there's a commercial, I can't remember what it was for, but if you look up like a grandpa Christmas commercial fitness or something like that, there's a commercial where a grandpa is lifting this kettlebell. He goes out to this garage and he lifts this kettlebell like in front of his head over and over again. And he's doing this like it's rainy out and stuff, and he goes through summer and spring and all sorts of stuff, and he's just lifting this kettlebell in front of him, and everyone's like, what the hell is this guy doing, right? And he's jogging and whatever. And so every day his wife's like watching him do this, and eventually it flashes forward to Christmas, and this little girl comes running in the door, and he grabs the girl and lifts her up above his head. Awesome. And enough to make a grown man cry. But it's an amazing commercial, but it's basically the point of the commercial is practice and exercise and prepare for what you want to do. It's really that simple in hunting and as well. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to be walking around with your kids when you're 60 years old, me as a 25-year-old right now better be making sure that my knees are in good shape and my legs are in good shape, and I can make that last as long as possible. That's in terms of just physical exercise. A huge component of as well, which I know a lot of people have huge fitness goals, like July 11th, I'm getting married and I want to be 195 pounds. I'm 222 pounds right now. So I have a lot to lose, and I can lose that weight, but all that happens outside of the gym. I look at the gym as like, these are my bonus calories, right? This is some extra stuff that it's bonus. It keeps me disciplined. It makes me motivated. I get to gain some muscle and stuff like that. I love the gym for those reasons, but that is not where I'm going to lose weight. That's where I'm going to make sure I retain muscle and keep muscle in my body. I'm not losing lean mass while I'm dieting. But that dieting and the calories you burn just existing is the vast majority of what you are going to be utilizing when you're losing weight. And so a very important, there's so many different things with losing weight. We could go with dieting and go on this tangent for forever. Elimination diets, where you're limiting a certain type of food entirely, fad diets, a lot of people will call them, are in most studies proven effective but short term. So like they can be effective, but and many of them aren't, but they will severely, if someone goes on carnivore, for instance, carnivore is good for you, right? But like if anyone goes on carnivore and they were eating a bunch of junk food, it's not that carnivore is magic, it's they're experiencing the benefits of no longer eating junk food, and drinking and having soda and sugar and all this crap. So there's a way to simplify it beyond all these fads. It's the main rules of thumb that I like to live by is you want to have as many, whatever your goal body weight is, say it's 150 pounds, you want to have a gram of protein per pound of goal body weight. So if I want to weigh 150 pounds, I want to have 150 grams of protein per day. Now, how do I limit my calories? No matter what, and I hope everyone knows this, but calories are a unit of energy. Calories are not this mystical thing. They're literally a unit of energy. If you are burning more calories than you are consuming, you will lose weight, period, end of story, no matter what you're eating. If you could eat 700 calories of donuts and Skittles, and if you burn 1,000 calories a day, you will have lost 300 calories every day. So I mean, that's just a fact. It doesn't matter what you eat, what kind of thyroid issues or whatever you have going on. It may be harder for you to burn calories. Your amount of calories that you burn in maintenance, which is just your daily activity per day, may be lower than the average person. But again, not something you can control the controllables. So like the rules I love to live by: gram of protein per goal body weight, and then at most 10 calories per gram of protein for the things you're eating. So for me, if I want to weigh 200 pounds, I'm going to have 200 grams of protein per day, at most 2,000 calories. It's not that hard to do, honestly. Like Chris, I was talking to you about it. I can make a double cheeseburger with 100 gram, 93% lean, 7% fat beef with cheese, with sauce, with a bun, a healthy keto bun, and some that tastes great. And that can be under that 10 calorie range. So I can have 430 calories and 43 grams of freaking protein in that. So you can make a lot of different foods that are really good for you. But the best ones for you are natural. And people always say like eating healthy is super expensive. It's really not. Like the best food for you, in my experience with calculating cost per serving and everything like that, is chicken. It's ridiculously high in protein per calorie. And it's relatively cheap. Tuna is another really good option. If you can stand tuna with soy sauce, hot sauce, mayo, whatever, it's a great option. It's really convenient. But if you don't like it, you don't like it, right? Not like lean ground beef. It's kind of expensive. Tastes better to me than fatty ground beef, honestly, because it's more meat. But it's like all those things. Venison, really freaking good for you. Steak, good for you, right?
Packed full of protein.
Yeah, and honestly, you're gonna look at things like fruits and vegetables, right? Fruits, pretty high in sugar, pretty high in calories, but it's natural. Your body, when you salivate and stuff, it's basically preparing you to take in the food that you're about to consume. So when you and your body will release hormones, it'll release insulin, and unutilized insulin will basically create fat. And that's what creates fat. It's not consuming fat. It can be through sugar, but essentially unutilized insulin through processes will essentially result in fat. And so, if you don't burn sugar, turn to fat, well, your insulin's made to break down sugar and fat and things like that. So don't, crazy quote me on that. But essentially, when you're looking at a Rice Krispie treat, your body's salivating, getting ready to eat that Rice Krispie treat.
Why is he gonna pick the Rice? Don't pick on the Rice Krispie treat.
It's a good example, but your body doesn't know what the hell's in a Rice Krispie treat. It can't prepare for that. It's not going to release the right amount of insulin to prepare for that food coming in. It's going to way over prepare for that or under prepare for it, and you're going to generally feel like crap afterward because you had this dump of preparation. And, it was just this little Rice Krispie treat. But when your body consumes an apple or strawberry or blueberry or any kind of fruit or vegetable or broccoli or whatever, it's simple. Your body recognizes what it is when it comes in. It's prepared to break it down, and it breaks it down and utilizes those calories for good really, really effectively. Doesn't turn into fat nearly as much. So if you got to pack on some kind of calories somewhere or something sweet somewhere, do it with natural sources like fruits, vegetables, etc.
Remind me after the podcast to tell you the Rice Krispie treat story.
Oh God. But I mean, I'm sorry I just went on such a big rant about that.
No, we just all went to college on nutrition. It's fine.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's it sounds crazy complex, but like everyone likes to make it really complex. But the simple rules are you're going to lose fat. If your goal is to lose weight, you're going to lose fat through your maintenance. You're not going to lose it through being a buff about exercise. So the general rules, a gram of protein per body weight. It's the most satiating macronutrient. So it's the most filling thing you could eat, between carbs, sugar, fat, protein. Protein will be the most filling thing you can eat. So while it might be expensive to have low calorie, high protein food sources, it also means you're going to be eating less food.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's more efficient, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like starches and fibers are also really filling too. So like potatoes and stuff like that. Potatoes are like widely known as the most filling food. That's very, very good for you as well. And again, we could dive into the rabbit hole of each little macronutrient, what's so important and what sources and all that stuff. But generally, eat stuff that's as raw as you can get it in terms of like, this is cooked chicken. This is a chicken, right? It's not chicken and breading and all this fried and all that other crap, right? Like,
don't eat raw chicken, guys.
Yeah, yes. Make it as simple as you can, something you can pick off the vine, out of the ground, shoot with a gun, something like that. It's generally going to be pretty good for you. Gram of protein per goal body weight and less than 10 calories per gram of protein you consume. And so, like, for instance, here with chicken, I'm looking at this little diet calculator I made because I'm a nerdy engineer.
Jesus Christ.
So just to give you sorry, I'm going all nerdy on this, but a chicken breast is 124 calories roughly for 107 grams of chicken. It's got 24 grams of protein, which means it's only 5 calories per gram of protein. And right now, the cost in my area per chicken breast is 63 cents per serving. So it's 63 cents for a chicken breast.
Damn.
Chicken breast, broccoli, you got your nutrients, way more than enough protein. You could have twice as many calories if you really wanted to and still have hit your 10 calories per gram of protein goal. And I could have chicken and broccoli and, cottage cheese or yogurt or whatever. And I could have that, for me, a delicious meal, and eat that 3 times a day. And I could have 1,500 calories and 200 grams of protein and be just fine. So it's really just not as complex as everyone makes it, but there's a lot of details you could throw into the equation with it, really.
Sure.
Yeah. Which is why I was saying earlier, there's lots of different ways to go with that topic. And I want to kind of round this out and keep it simple for our listeners. So, and this is going with what Jacob said too. As far as the fitness goes, identifying your goals is, I think, a good start for your foundation. Figuring out what you want out of your scouting, where you're scouting, what you want out of that time frame and into your season. Like, figure out what your goals are, because that's going to help set the foundation. And to keep it simple for people, so that way they don't have to do math or anything like Sklenar was talking about. In general, exercise in general is going to be good for you. Consistently doing that is even better, right? Like I said earlier, I usually recommend at least 3 to 4 times a week consistently doing exercise. If you are preparing for scouting and you know that the activity level is going to be a lot higher than what you're used to, I would recommend a couple months beforehand of preparing to do that, the exercise 3 to 4 times a week. And you can go down the rabbit holes of getting very specific, doing specific training for the type of terrain that you're going to be in and stuff, which maybe we'll do a different podcast for a different time. There's tons and tons of different exercises you could do. But in general, consistent exercise, giving yourself enough time to prepare to do that. If you do not have the time, then I would recommend gradually... What?
Not making excuses, or
I'd recommend gradually working into it. So let's say I have a month, right, to kind of prepare. Don't go out and try and do 10 miles in the hills in one day. You're probably going to be very sore, and depending on activity level, age, all that stuff, maybe you'll end up with some aches and pains and places that you weren't anticipating, and maybe that sets you back for a little while because then you got to recover, right? So in general, give yourself plenty of time to prepare for that. If you don't have the time, right, gradually work into it. Don't just ramp up your activity right away. From a nutrition standpoint, I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist. I don't give specific information to my patients because that's not my wheelhouse. But I do say, just like Jacob was saying, right, a good, well-balanced diet goes a long way. Protein is very important, especially for the recovery process. You want to make sure you're have plenty of protein in your diet. From a scouting standpoint, and this is something that I know, Chris, you've run into, I've run into out there, not bringing enough food and stuff with me or water in some cases. You want to make sure that you are staying hydrated, definitely a day or two before you're scouting. Bring plenty of water while you're scouting. I had an instance this year where I might have gotten pretty close to some heat exhaustion.
Chris level.
Yeah, because I didn't bring enough water. That was my mistake. And I got to the point where I was trying to go up a hill and I'd make it 20 yards and I was just wiped. I had to sit, rest for a few minutes, get up, go another 20, 30 yards, sit back down, felt a little lightheaded, dizzy. You don't want to be in that situation. Chris was in a similar situation. And again, kind of ran into the same thing.
Yeah.
So you want to bring plenty of water and then also something to eat. The tuna, like like Sklenar was mentioning, tuna packets are good. You are going to be burning lots of calories. You're going to be. I would bring a source of carbs as well while you're out there. Some fruits are really good. Sometimes grapes. You get a handful of grapes. Bring those with you. Bananas.
Go buy a
apples
bunch of
convenient.
bags
Yeah.
of the what is it? The freeze dried fruit. It's the best shit in the world. It's like candy when you're out there walking miles and miles. It's phenomenal.
In general, like fruits, carbohydrates are made to be burned right away. Your body is expecting to utilize that fuel immediately. It's what they're great for. It's why, moms bring fruit to the soccer game and stuff like that, and oranges and all sorts
I
of
got you
stuff. But,
orange slices.
if you're taking a break, if you're taking a break in the hills and you're just busting your ass with Jake Bush for a day, I mean, having some kind of maybe a granola bar, simple granola bar, and a bit of protein for long-term energy because he's going to keep you up far after dark, and then a fruit to get your ass off that log when it's time to get going again.
Yeah.
That is, your perfect combo of nutrients, protein, long-term energy, and everything.
Yeah, I try and bring, like you said, like something well-rounded, maybe trail mix that doesn't necessarily. I mean, I kind of like the one that has bits of dark chocolate in it, but I'll bring like granola, and like tuna, and then a quick source of those carbohydrates, some type of fruit. If I'm feeling something sweet, I like. Some people will use. I don't know if anybody watches like Jim Stepani and stuff like that. He's big on the gummy bears. I'll bring like a
the gummies.
a bag of fruit snacks or something. Like a very quick
Not the weed
source.
gummies.
Yeah. Because my little guy loves fruit snacks, so I will grab a bag or two and put them in my pack, and just as something like a quick source of that quick source of carbohydrates.
And the other thing to kind of hit on, and I'm like the least, professional with all this, but keeping your blood sugar at a reasonable level keeps your spirits up a little bit. You ever notice you get out there, you walk, you get hot, you're not drinking water, you're not eating, and then all of a sudden you kind of just dip down. You can feel your blood sugar kind of going down. Maybe I'm diabetic. Josh is pretty confident in that, but it'll not only keep you in good spirits, but also your focus levels there, and you're able to stick with the game plan that you got going on. Because really, when you think about it, you're out there, you're scouting, you're walking around, you're looking for things. You have a task at hand that you're trying to complete, and you don't want to just go take a nap under an oak tree or whatever, or just have to leave. So just something to keep in mind.
one other thing I just want to add that I also like to bring. I'll bring an electrolyte tab and throw it in one of the water bottles. That is something I like to do like midday. Then chug that bottle of water with the electrolytes and then keep on going. So that is something I typically have.
Who was it? Who was it that posted on the page? They were like scouting with Mountain Dews. They were drinking Mountain Dews while scouting during the summer.
I got a SoCam picture of a guy last weekend with a white monster in his backpack.
Nice.
Dude, that's the shit that pisses me off because you see like some dude in blue jeans with no shirt on walking with a Mountain Dew and a cigarette, and he's like out walking everybody with less than zero nutrition.
If you love Mountain Dew, if you love soda, if you love energy drinks, if you love your sugary coffee or whatever, there's a lot of really good 0-calorie options. And every peer-reviewed study, so every like certified study that takes into account these diet drinks, it makes a lot of sense. If you were drinking something that was 200 calories and had a bunch of sugar, and now you're drinking something that's 0 calories and has no sugar, you are going to lose weight. So like these diet drinks, they are good for you. Everyone thinks aspartame is awful. People are like, oh, it's outlawed in the UK. Well,
terrible.
It's not. Do a Google search. It's actually not that bad for you, Chris.
I've heard it's, according to people that do research, it causes cancer.
I would look it up in peer-reviewed studies. The concentration of it in a drink and the amount that you would consume, you would have to have like 24 diet sodas a day to have any kind of increase in risk of cancer.
We live in Appalachia. That's possible.
Yeah.
Well, it's an important phrase. What is it? The dose makes the poison, essentially. Like the amount that you have is what is going to make it bad for you. Yes, the color red red dye is very different than what I'm saying, but the color yellow is radiation. Like it's a type of radiation. Like it could give you cancer, but you're never going to encounter a concentration of that wavelength that's going to actually give you cancer. So there's risk in a lot of things, but like aspartame was the boogeyman for a long, long, long time. There's a lot of research. Look at peer-reviewed studies. I would urge you peer-reviewed studies that have to do with it. But if this
Diet
is all
soda's
confusing and I ranted,
so I'll never have to worry about it.
Whatever. If this was all confusing and I ranted way too long on anything with health,
comment below.
There's a guy, there's a guy that lives by what he teaches, and he's freaking jacked and a very humble and awesome dude. And his name's Andrew Huberman. He's a professor of ophthalmology. It's ophthalmology and something else at Stanford. He's I don't know. I've learned so much from different resources he puts out. One podcast I would have to plug for him, if this is confusing to you, is episode 128 or 182 of the Huberman Lab podcast. It's with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and it's titled How to Exercise and Eat for Optimal Health and Longevity. It's exactly what we're talking about, like actual practicing protocols that you can implement in your life right now about your diet, how much you should eat, of what you should eat, anything down to your physical health, what exercises you should perform, what's good for you if you're in terms of longevity, which I think is what's most important for hunters, and then even some mental health things that you can practice as well. I've re-listened to it probably 6 times. It is phenomenal. But I would highly encourage that you listen to that episode and then potentially even some more of the ones that he has.
Oh yeah, Jacob Emery. What's your gym routine, bro?
Dude, I've got no business.
Fried bologna, Mountain Dew, and Christmas tree cakes.
I don't. I used to be like the little 5'7.5" tall beefcake.
I like that you say 1/2. Well, I'm 5'7" and 1/2.
When I wake up in the morning, I'm like right at 5'8", and then by the end of the day, I'm closer to 5'7". So
Gotcha.
Man, I don't know. As much as I'd like to like hit the gym and things like that. Um, I know everybody says they don't have time, but if you want to scout the way I do and you want to go on these trips, and then you've got the crazy work schedule paired with 3 children, one that doesn't live with us full time, it's only half the time. So I'm spending time running back and forth, and a wife who likes to go to the gym. So that's her thing. It's hard. It's tough to find that time. And I have a physically demanding job as it is, as far as climbing ladders and lifting lights and just, I mean, cutting pipe and packing. I do a lot of physical activity through work. So I'm not going to say that it's strenuous too bad, but it does keep me active. My workout routine normally starts about March 25th when I start chasing the birds. That's when I find out just about how out of shape I am. But there's just something about that gobble. It's like I can go another 50 feet before I've got to stop. But I don't. Yeah, exactly. What? Yeah, I thought I might have. The only thing I really touched on when you sent me the notes was just kind of like things that I do on my out of state hunts, as far as keeping myself in hunting condition, as far as like hydrating and stuff like that. Um, I don't like to do much of the mixing of powders and whatnot. It's just pretty much just straight water. I may stop and grab a body armor or something at a gas station. But I do keep some B12 with me almost all the time. And I know you're really supposed to take it like continuously for it to help it all. But I think I'm kind of somewhat deficient in that, especially over the last like 5 or 6 years, which is where I've gained a stepchild and also another 4-year-old boy. So that probably could be why I'm always just exhausted. But I keep my ibuprofen and B12 with me in the vehicle, and it's tough because I get headaches really bad if I don't have like my morning coffee, and I know that's like super dehydrating for you. I know this, but I also know if I don't drink it, like I'm gonna get a headache. Like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's
So
called caffeine dependency.
yeah, I know. Well, maybe it's a mind game, but like I could drink something with caffeine in it in the morning instead of coffee, and it's like my body's like, no, you go get you some of that bean soup.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I will.
Caffeine is also to give you some positive with this, Jacob. Caffeine's also an appetite suppressant too. So it does suppress how much you want to eat as well. Yeah. So while it is a diuretic, which means you have to pee more, it is an appetite suppressant a bit. And I would say if you're another good protocol for caffeine too is to try to have it more than after 90 minutes has passed once you've woken up. So like if you can make it 90 minutes without it, you've kind of broken into your circadian rhythm for the day. And sometimes you feel like you don't need it at that point. Sometimes you're going through your withdrawals and you're going to have it. But it's much better for you because then your body is able to get in tune with its own rhythm, that certain things with the way you take in light, like we look at deer with like light patterns and stuff like that. As more light gets in the day, they know it's getting closer to rut, all that stuff. Well, we operate on a daily time cycle where basically the amount of melatonin, when it gets darker, melatonin's released in your brain, signals that you're ready to go to sleep. Same thing happens when it gets light out. Essentially, your body starts hopping this rhythm, and you notice by X amount of time, you're starting to fire on all cylinders. If you can let your body naturally reach that point, which 90 minutes is a good rule of thumb, if you need caffeine after that, then that's your booster. But essentially, you're not disrupting that normal wake up and rhythm that your body's got to go through.
I got you. I normally make it about 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna dig into some of that. Maybe I'll change my routine up.
For our listeners, kind of just going over all this kind of health and wellness stuff. I see patients every day. Like I see the gamut of different injuries, diagnoses, head to toe, you name it, anything like musculoskeletal. So if you've made it this far, comment on the video or leave a comment on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. If you guys would like to hear like an episode or see like a YouTube video on some of the common stuff I see that you might be dealing with, like plantar fasciitis, peroneal tendonitis, Achilles tendonitis, different types of knee pain, different causes of knee pain, knee arthritis.
Use Chris terms because they're not fucking doctors. They don't know all that.
Well, if they got some of this, they know it.
Acute vaginitis.
Different types of hip pain, right? It could be trochanteric bursitis, hip arthritis, all that stuff. Low back pain, chronic low back pain. Probably 40% of my caseload is chronic low back pain. For a lot of people, we'll refer to like sciatica. It is a catch-all diagnosis. I don't necessarily like it because there's different things that can cause it. But sciatica, I see that all the time. Yeah, I see different shoulder issues, rotator cuff issues, like head to toe. I see it. So if there are things that our listeners would like to hear about, at least some, again, formality, I'm not giving you medical advice, but I can at least talk about the things that I like to do for some of these diagnoses.
Could we do a video or something where like maybe I have a pain and you give me advice?
Yes.
Just do a video of Josh giving Chris a massage for an hour.
Dude, I'm telling you,
Boil me up, baby.
I had such bad like high back, shoulder, neck. I think it was linked to like my trap area, and he gave me, I think there were like 2 or 3 of the dumbest looking exercises. You would never in your life be able to even think of this. And I did it reluctantly. And I remember on like almost done with the second round, he told me to do 3 for X amount of time and all this stuff. And almost through the second round of those stretches, I just felt my entire muscle just like relax, or it was like it just like pulled out or what. I don't know how to explain it. How
it just relaxed,
contracted, or whatever, and all of a sudden the pain went from like severe to like almost gone, and then once I got through that third set, it was gone, and it had been here for a day and a half, 2 days, and it was bad. Like I was roughing it. So,
yeah.
And I don't go to the doctor, and I didn't even want to talk to him about it. And because we're guys, we always screw with each other. So I didn't want to come up with another case of acute vaginitis. So, but good stuff. If you want to see something like that, or you got something going on, you might want some ideas or whatever, hit us up in the comments section. Let us know what's going on. That is a large part the reason that I wanted Josh in here, because multiple times he's helped me out of a jam like that where my lower back, my neck, my knees and ankles are killing me, and then boom, gone. So anyways, guys, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Mr. Emery, where can people find you? Where can they watch your hunts? See you play jokes on that poor person, Stephen Fuller.
That poor guy. YouTube, obviously, DO3 Outdoors. Best way to search it. You can also use my name, Jacob Emery. It'll pull up a lot of my videos. If you guys want to sub, please do. If you don't, I don't blame you. I kind of dropped the ball this year. Like I said, I don't know if I've said it while we were recording or not, but I was fortunate enough to kill 6 bucks across a few different states this year. And man, if I could have just been more disciplined on making sure the camera was fully batteried up and the camera arm was on the tree on a different hunt, man, I could have had some killer hunts to show you guys this year. I still got a couple good videos out there. But yeah, looking forward to adding some more to it in the next few weeks with a few reviews I've got planned. And of course the birds be here before we know it.
Hell yeah.
Gobble.
Skleo, how about yourself?
The mobile hunter. did a lot of stuff with the mobile hunter. We'll excited to do more stuff with you guys as well. So anywhere on mobile hunter, you guys are going to see me as well. And then the Wild Calling is my YouTube channel. Bunch of stuff on there. Find me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Looking up my name, probably find the rest of my stuff too.
All right. Well, guys, I appreciate you being a part of this first episode. Everybody at home, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube, we really appreciate it a lot. If you wouldn't mind, reviews help a ton when you're talking about a free way to support the podcast. Throwing a comment or something down on YouTube or the thumbs up or whatever is also another good way, or just simply sharing it with a buddy, a hunting buddy or whatever. Josh, did you have anything to add?
No.
All righty. Well, guys, this has been the Mobile Hunter Podcast, and we really appreciate you tuning in. Thanks a lot. See ya.
See ya.